How did you become a filmmaker? What inspired you?
Oh boy, I started as an actor.
Really?
Yeah, I loved it. And I was in Vancouver. I grew up in Vancouver, Canada, and there wasn't a lot of filming at the time when I was a young kid just out of high school.
Mm.
So I did quite a bit of theater. I went to theater school and I was doing a commercial and ran into an old buddy of my brother's who was a dolly grip on the film crew. And I was like, what is happening back here? And so I did my part in front of the camera, and then I sort of was hanging out in the back and talking to the director. And for the first time, really paid attention to what was going on in the film set. And I was sold. I was just like, this is so interesting. There's so many different creative people here, all kind of thrown together, and they're working together and making this work. It was so exciting to me. And as an actor, you don't have a lot of control often, or certainly I didn't, over when you worked. And this just felt like a whole new world that was opened up to me. So I started working as a production assistant on commercials mostly, and found myself in the production office. And at the time, of course, young women, there weren't a lot of roles for women on set, other than hair, makeup, wardrobe, and script continuity. It mostly was all the dudes. And so I was in the office, and if you could answer the phone politely, and if you could put together a PO form, you were never leaving the office. And I kept saying, I just want to go to set and I want to be on set. And it was just, yeah, no, answer the phone. And no, put the PO together and, whatever. And so occasionally I get to take the film in to the post house on my little motorcycle in the middle of the night after we'd finished filming. But anyway, long story short, I ended up going back to film school, back to school at Vancouver Film School, and
Mm.
started again. And so then I went and started again after film school at the bottom of the rung on set as a production assistant, and then just worked my way up. And I was pretty rapid rise into the AD field at the time, just because I really understood the workflow from having been in the office. And I eventually became a first AD, and I was a first AD for many years, and I worked with many, many, many different directors. And I loved the whole process of the director. And again, I think my manager counted at one point I'd worked with something like 200 different directors,
Good for
but
you.
only two women in my entire career as an AD. Just to give you an idea of it, there were very, very few.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I didn't think, I mean, I would wanted to be a director, always wanted to be a director, but that was pretty unrealistic. So at the time I thought, oh, whatever. But I so enjoyed the whole process of it. I would ask the directors I worked with what their process was, because I really noticed as an AD, when we're prepping a show, whether it was a movie or a television show, I would watch the director prep all the other departments, but I wouldn't actually see the insides of why they were making the choices they were making. Occasionally, I'd get to kind of, we'd be standing on a set somewhere and I'd see them working out how they're going to block something. But I really didn't understand why they were making those lens choices or why they were choosing what they chose. And I'd had a good background from the Vancouver Film School, for sure, but it was fascinating to me. So I would ask these directors, hey, I see you prepping everybody else, but what is behind the choices you're making? And they all
Mm.
were so different. And in fact, for a time, I kept a little book that I would write it out in. And because I was working on pretty big shows, they were often, the directors came from all over the world and they weren't usually local. And I would say to them, hey, I have a car. And on Saturday, if you would like, I can get us into the studio so you can work and do your shot listing on the set. Or I can drive us to the location and I can get permission to get in. And I can, and I would love to do that. And they would say to me, Mairzee, you idiot, you spend so much time at work already. Why on earth do you want to spend your weekend doing this? And I would be, because I love it and I want to see how you do what you do. It's so fascinating to me. And one day I would love to be a director, and I just want to watch, I want to learn. They were all super open. I mean, these guys, they were all, the usual at the time. The directors were all like middle-aged white dudes, and but they were so giving and so loving. And I would run around in the rain with an umbrella in a cemetery with, my write in the rain paper, writing out the shot list while I'm acting it out with the director and trying to work things out. And I would ask them questions about why this lens. Are you thinking about a frame rate? What exactly, we were doing a lot of visual effects, special effects, stunts, like really complicated stuff too. So understanding how that technical stuff can be explored, but still use an artist's view behind it and why and how. And it was so excellent. So I learned a ton from these guys. And then finally I got an opportunity to direct an episode of Smallville. And at the time it was a very big show in television. And we did a lot of visual effects and a lot of special effects and a lot of stunts and a lot of very technical stuff that demands the director understands how everything integrates. So I got my script. I was super excited. And so I read it, and I was super lucky because it was a terrific script. Amazing script by Caroline Dreys was the writer. She's amazing. And so I immediately emailed my director friends that were on that show that, understood Smallville, and had NDAs in place for Smallville. And I asked them if they would look at my script and tell me if they saw any big bridge out ahead, or did they have any advice for me. And of course, these are working directors. They're super, super, super busy. They don't have time for this. Like you don't have time to have dinner, you're so busy. So I said, I know that, if you just have a little quick glance at it and give me any of your quick thoughts, I would really appreciate it. Of course, I got back from these guys, these tomes of notes, so supportive, saying, all right, Mairzee, this is great. You're going to do great, buddy. This is, be careful of this, watch this. If you have questions, make sure you talk to them now. And they gave me a whole bunch of sort of support and just saying, you got this, you know what you're doing, you got this. And it was super fun experience, and it was a really well received episode, and that was sort of the beginning of it from then on.
Good for you that you took that initiative, and that's something that is so important in our industry, right? Is just taking that initiative, going the extra mile, because you're doing something that nobody else is doing, and that puts you 10 steps, if not 100 steps ahead of everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just, I have genuine passion for this industry, genuine passion.
Yeah.
Where when I would think about it, it would make my heart squish. I would feel like somebody was holding my heart and squishing it when I was standing on the outside, when I was in the production office, standing at the window, looking down at the set and wishing I could get down there. I literally would be short of breath and have somebody was stepping on my heart. So wanted to be part of it. And I genuinely love all the elements of it. It is so fascinating to me. And I love working with film crews because we're sort of like the island of, forgotten toys or broken toys or something. There's something about a film crew where we are generally think outside of the box, really enjoy, and that every single day is different. Every single day is different than yesterday. And so in Canada, the saying, keep your stick on the ice, keep your attention up, pay attention, keep your head up and be ready to jump in. And this idea that there is an auteurism to filmmaking, well, for sure, there is a singular vision that the director has to employ. But that vision can be in some evolution, and it generally needs to, as we move along. But this is an incredibly collaborative art form.
Yes.
Where we need everyone, all of our department heads, and not just the ones in the art department, not just the ones in the creative aspects of filming, the guys in the technical fields are incredibly creative as well. And when we're doing any project, it's important to recognize, firstly, that because of the hours of a film set, which are generally start at 12-hour day, that's the start. And most people come in before and leave after that. So there's big, long days. So one thing I always remind myself of and know, like I know, is that every member of your crew is tearing off a day of their life calendar and handing it to you. So when you think of that and understand that that's how much people want to be here, that there is a respect for people that I have, and understand that most people, after a big long day on a film set, they want to know that they were doing something cool. They want to do great work. Nobody wants to go home and say, whew, I got away with doing nothing today. You know, not on a film set. People want to contribute. And even if that is the caterer being as creative as they can be to make sure people are fed and paying attention. Oh, the weather got really cold. Let's make sure, the craft service person, let's get some hot ginger out to everybody and drinks. You know, what can we do to help? And that's everybody, from my special effects guys to my production assistants sitting in the parking lockup. You know, everybody is contributing, and there are so many elements of creative contribution in the crew that are small that people don't recognize, like even how the grip will carve the light with a flag, and just a little bit more. And they watch how the actor is turning, just so maybe if I just pull it back a little bit, it's going to work a little nicer. And then the DP is like, yeah, man, that looks great. Or the dolly grip, the guy that pushes the camera dolly, that person, male or female, that person is operating the camera operator, essentially. And their ability to understand or feel the scene is super important. And I will often say to my operator, to my dolly grip, hey, you guys, let's just really feel this right now. Obviously, I'm trying to build tension in a shot right now. So just pay attention to the actor, what the actor's doing, and just try and stay with them, or try and keep the frame a little short-sighted the whole time so we worry about what's going to happen behind them. You know, and so we'll do that. The crew will help me achieve what I'm looking for, especially if I'm clear with them about what the purpose of this shot is, what we're trying to do with this shot. And then it always amazes me the different levels of things that my special effects guy comes in and he's like, oh yeah, I laid the ground fog really low at this part so that you'd be really worried, Mairzee, because you said you wanted to be concerned about the space behind the actor, that the audience is going to get nervous that somebody's coming up on them. So I laid in the fog a little bit differently this way. I'm like, that's excellent. That's amazing. Thank you. You know, so there's so much talent on a film set.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, one of the things that I always find interesting is that, you know, whether you have a small film set or a big film set, people, almost if not all the cases, 99.9%, are living in that world, even on a commercial set, you know, just to make sure that this is being taken care of, and everything else, all the side problems, they may have come from a bank appointment where they owe $20,000, or an argument with their spouse, or whatever that is. But when they're in that zone, it's like everything else goes away. I mean, how many professions where you can pull that off? Like, just to have that feeling of a child and enjoying it and loving it. Yeah, there'll be some moments where you'll get, you know, ups and downs, but it's just about resolving it, and that energy and that gratification that you get. It's almost like giving birth, right? It's like you're just literally creating something from the scratch and then seeing it on the big screen. The most beautiful feeling in the world. Even if you've made a garbage movie, let's just argue, but it's still that there's so much effort of a team that goes into it. There's still some pride in there for sure. And that's so important.
Absolutely. The achievement is Herculean. If you think of all the moving parts, and a lot of your audience won't necessarily understand how film sets work, but
Yeah.
it very definitely has been modeled on a military hierarchy. And it's because things are moving and changing so quickly that when a different idea has to be pursued or a change has to happen, there isn't time to bring everybody into a room and say, hey, fourth company grip and, third visual effects guy,
Yeah.
this is what we're doing and why we're doing it. We don't have time for it. It just has to move fast. And the amount of money that is being spent per second is
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty stunning. So efficiency is very important. Everybody has to be super prepared, but you have to be really agile to adapt and shuck and jive, as you need to. And the only real way to do that is to have a hierarchy in place. So if I suddenly say, drop that camera, move it over here, do this, we don't have time to get into why that decision is happening or the trucks need to move or something. We just don't have time. There has to be a trust in your department head and in the hierarchy to just do it and um, do what needs to get done because we are moving so quickly. And that's not to say that people can't have questions. Of course they can and they do. And, that's all completely valid. But in general, the hierarchy is in place just to keep moving and to be awake. Everybody is so awake. And just as we demand that or ask of it, try to create it, that opportunity for our actors to be present, to be right here, so that we can see their performances in their eyes, in their breath, and they're really, really present. So is the crew. So are the camera people. So is the DP. So is the director. We are so present in these moments. When I'm watching a performance in the monitor, I will find myself crying. I'll find myself super undefended, unguarded. While I'm shooting, I'm in a bit of a space where I'm so open to the emotions of my actors and even to the crew about what we're all doing. We're trying to keep ourselves, everybody present. And it feels when somebody comes in and maybe they're not connecting to the material very well, or they're, for whatever reasons, they're struggling. Maybe they're afraid and they're a new actor that can only hear their heartbeat in their ears and they're, all get kind of lost. It's really apparent. We can all feel it because I know for myself, and usually with my director of photography for sure, is that our hearts are unguarded and we're present. So
Yeah.
it's then when that happens, it becomes a lot more obvious. So then I have a bunch of, ways to try and help that actor breathe it
Yeah.
out.
And I think it's also because before I moved to Monsters, um, sorry, Monarch Monster Legacy Monsters, that one of the also thing is element is I feel that when you're on the set as a director, and I don't know about, I'm sure it's about you too and everybody else, but at least for me, is that because I'm so zoned out, right? And even if I'm not vulnerable or emotional in my real life in front of the world, in that moment, I have no clue who the hell is around, and there's no sense of embarrassment or anything. And then when that happens and everybody else feels it, that's when you know that you're so, I wouldn't say that's when you know, but you're just so involved and you're into that character, you're into that story, and nothing else matters and nothing else exists.
Yep, exactly. 100%. 100%. And it's so zoned in really to this, this box.
Yeah.
And there's a safety on set to be that way. There's an expectation. And it's the same thing with the actors. is there should be a safety, that they are allowed to try things that may not work, to just be and be present and don't have to defend an emotional response. The crew is supportive of them being present, just being super present. And when you're present, you're unguarded and you fuck things up occasionally. They may go too far. They tried something and it didn't work or whatever. And I will always, with my actors, uh, ensure that they know I have their back. They can try things. We can fail. It's okay. We'll come back and we'll try something else. But it's really important. It's safe environment. And that is the crew also supporting that. The crew has to help this be a safe environment.
Yeah.
And they are, and it's just how people, there's so much respect for each other on set. It's an amazing environment that I've never seen it anywhere else.
Yeah, I agree. I don't even think it probably even exists in some cases. I mean, one can argue even at your homes, like in your families, because
Yeah.
it's totally different because, you're just doing one thing. And moving on to Monarch, because it had so many timeline, well, I shouldn't say so many, multiple two timelines, but different directors, and the way the story moved from episode 1 to episode 10, episode 10, it has to be planned in such a way where it was everything is interconnected. So were
Mm-hmm.
you were you at any time, well, first of all, were all the episodes being shot somewhat simultaneously, if not at different, closer to each other? And were you in touch with other directors, especially the ones that would come before your episodes and after your episodes?
I was, well, we don't shoot them all simultaneously.
Yeah.
Basically, how a film crew works in episodic television is your shooting crew, once they start, they shoot all the episodes in order until the end. So every day, your shooting crew is always shooting. But while the first episode, or what we did, were blocks. So the first 2 episodes, while those were being prepped, no, the crew was not started shooting yet. And then the minute that was ready to start shooting, obviously the crew starts. So when the crew started to shoot episodes 1 and 2, then the director to prep episodes 3 and 4 began. And so
Mm.
that director was prepping 3 and 4 while 1 and 2 shot. And then once 1 and 2 were done, episode 3 and 4 started shooting. So as far as the crew knew, they're shooting with episodes 1 and 2 one day, and then the next day is now episodes 3 and 4. It just seamlessly keeps going for them. And then while episode 3 and 4 is shooting, then episodes 5 and 6 are prepping. And so there's a leapfrogging of the director while the shooting crew carries on all the way
Mm.
through. And so what that allows, one of the great things about that is that if you're doing one of the inner episodes, for sure, you have access to the guys shooting on the floor. And so you can connect with them and the actors, and you can watch what they're doing on set. And then when you are shooting, invariably the next director would come to your set and chat and ask questions, and sort of we would all collaborate with each other and try and support each other, because invariably what happens is that we have all the scripts. I read all the scripts before I started my prep, so I understood what was going on, and I would make sure that I understood where my scripts sat in the greater story and what the job of those scripts were, and how I would take what the other episodes did and where I push the audience into the next block, for sure. So there's a lot of collaboration, but things are discovered on set that may not have been anticipated in the script. So then scripts are they evolve, and things are discovered. And it's not just that there's a location problem, for example, where it was written with this in mind, but we couldn't get that. We ended up with this over here. So you have to, again, you have to be very agile, and things are always kind of adjusting and shifting. And so there's a lot of collaboration between the directors,
Yeah.
chatting with each other about what's working, what maybe isn't, or needs a bit more help or whatever. But this was a great property. These great scripts, really terrific story with some fabulous actors that I had never worked with or had ever seen their work. And I was super surprised and excited by, especially the young actors. And Kurt, of course, was a dream to work with. Absolutely, like literally a dream, absolutely fabulous. And I think that the younger actors, learned a lot from watching him. A lot. I would sit there, my director of photography, and I would laugh occasionally. We'd watch Kurt do something and then watch the other younger actors sort of, look what he's doing. Oh, I'm going to do that too. It was like we had this one situation where we had to do hair, makeup, come in and do their little touches, and they needed to get a little bit of dirt on the actors. And so the wardrobe people have a little, like a bag made out of nylons that they have dirt in it, and they sort of pad at you to get the dust. And we were in a hurry. And Kurt was like, he just dropped to his knees and rolled around in the dirt and got up, done. And the
That's
other
awesome.
actors were like, oh, I better do that too. And so he just taught them, about their ownership of the process, that they were part of the process, that they weren't, not to say that these people didn't know this already. They did. They were
Yeah.
fabulous. Everybody was terrific. But he just really brought home, to reminded everybody that we are a team. We're all together in on this. It's not like the crew is over here and the actors are over here. It was just, there was a real sense of integration between the first team and second team. It was great.
Right. I'm gonna come to the opening scene of episode 5, but just want to make an interesting uh point. When I finished the first episode, I mean, you know how in the credit it shows up Wyatt Russell, and then Wyatt flips to Kurt and Russell
Yeah,
remains there. It didn't, like, I just didn't think much of it. And I didn't even realize that was his son until the second episode, because what happened to me when I was watching the second episode, somehow I remembered this old Disney movie. I think I'm guessing it's from the 1960s, where Kurt Russell was in it. It was called Now You See Him, Now You Don't. It was literally about invisibility. He discovers an invisibility formula, and it's a
yeah,
comedy, and it's seen it dozens of times. And then it hit me. Wyatt Russell looks exactly the same way as Kurt did in that movie. And
right.
that's when I was like, wow. And they both did a phenomenal, phenomenal performance. And which leads me to the opening sequence of episode 5, I think, where they're at the ball, and the two protagonists. It's episode 5, right? If I'm not mixing it up, is it 6 or 5?
I think six, actually, six.
Oh, episode 6. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that scene. It did
So are
so much.
we, can, when is this going to air? Because this
I'm
has
gonna
not,
I I'm gonna post it afterwards. Don't worry, no problem.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
no worries. But I absolutely loved that scene. Aside from some of the monster sequences and some of the other scenes, I thought that was one of my favorite scenes in the entire series. The way you executed that, it could even be a short film by itself, and which is how I judge a scene. Like, it can stand on its own, and I thought it was brilliantly done. Make a comment
Oh,
about that first of all.
thank you. That is so sweet of you. Yeah, that was super fun for everyone involved, as you can well imagine. Everybody was excited about this because it's a sort of, it lived unto itself. And so the art department, the location that we found, um, and Wyatt, I think, was doing some dance. He was practicing at home. And in fact, what was really fun on that particular day is we had a bunch of extras in, and everybody's in period dress, and without getting too into it, but
No
What
problem.
was super fun is Goldie Hawn showed up on set to support
Oh,
her son,
cool.
because I guess they had, he's practicing dancing. She wanted to come out and support her boy. And just, I was really struck with what a lovely family. They were genuinely a lovely family. So she's there to see her boy dancing. And then his wife and new baby were also came to visit set. And it was just such a warm and generous sense in that space for everybody. So I think that's one of the reasons the scene was very successful, because everybody felt
Interesting.
like we were going to have so much fun. It was exciting. Wyatt had worked hard to, you know, he's a hockey player trying to figure out where to put his feet as a dance to dance. And so that was it was all very, very fun.
Yeah. Was there a particular I don't want you to go into this scene, any scene. Was there anything that you worked on in those two episodes? Whereas we talked about you got to improvise on a set almost all the time, if not
Yeah.
most of the time. Was there a challenge that came across? And if so, whatever that was, how did you sort of tackle it? And how did you, deal with it?
Well, I think in all cinema, television, cinema, whatever, whenever there's a fight scene or a love scene or a dance scene or any sort of these kind of scenes, there it's not just a fight scene. It's not just a love scene. It's not just a dancing scene. It's a scene first and foremost. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's conflict. There's may be resolution. There may not be resolution, but there's a lot going on within these beats. Otherwise, it's just an interlude. And you know how
Mm,
I'm sure you've done this, where you're watching TV and you're watching a main character getting into a fight, and the main character is going to live because they're the main character in the series, that carries on. So right there, the stakes are diluted. It's going something, how it's going to end, or you have a suspicion. So the challenge to the filmmaker is then to not make this an interlude, not just make it a little beat that is of itself, that has no bearing. The challenge is to find, where are their stakes here? What can the audience learn from this character? Is there a new piece of information? Is there a new texture about this person that the audience is now going to have sort of a privileged witness of? An intimacy, perhaps, a moment when the character's mask drops for a beat,
yeah.
and we get to see the real, authentic them in this horrific situation or a challenging situation. And so those are things that are woven into the subtext, not so much in the text. And so the approach I would take with those is, firstly, understanding that those events are a scene, they're not an interlude, and then working with the actor to understand where they are in their journey. And because as an actor, they have to look at each piece, each episode, each scene, actually, and say, why am I different at the end of this episode or this scene than I was from the beginning of this scene? And why? What happened in this scene or this episode that changed me? And we're always making sure, especially with our female characters, but with all characters, we're always making sure that there is an agency to that character, so that they have opportunity to make a choice somewhere that helped the change happen. So historically, female characters were always sort of in a place of reaction. Things were happening to them, and they were always just
Mm,
sort of rolling with it. And there's been a real concerted effort in the last 10 years specifically, but maybe a little longer, to give women more agency in their characters. So they're not always in response. They're they're making choices in reaction to what's happening, as opposed to just being, thrown off bridges all the time. So with the actors and talking about their characters, we will chart sort of, I'll say, okay, so where is the pivot for you in this scene? Where do you think it is? Where does your character have a choice? And it may not be really apparent initially. And so we'll have a conversation about this, and hopefully we'll be having these conversations during prep, because this is important stuff for them as they're thinking about it and as they're kind of crafting their performance throughout the entire episode or series. And, hopefully what the audience is going to receive is a roller coaster ride, a fun roller coaster ride, not just a drive, but they're going to see chills and spills. It's going to go up, it's going to go down, it's going to go, and keeping it very authentic to the character. So in these situations, sitting with the actors and chatting about where there might be a big pivot in the scene where they have a big choice. And I might say, well, I think it's kind of in this area. And they'll say, yeah, maybe, I think maybe it was earlier. And I'll go, okay, great. Because I don't need to be right. I just need to know, we just need to agree, so I can point the camera at that moment. But then, sometimes what happens is we're blocking that scene and discover that's not the moment. Neither one of us was right. It was somewhere else. And that's fine too. And I'll go, okay, yeah, we're going to adjust this a little bit, because I might be trying to choreograph the camera work to build at that moment. And so now this will adjust how my intention was in how I was going to film it, and how they were going to perform it, maybe even. So it's important for the filmmakers to really understand script analysis and have a good grasp of where they are in the script, and what the job of each scene is, and where are your characters, and where's the audience. And that's something I was noticing with some of the bigger stars that I've worked with over the years, is they tend to really have a great grasp of where the audience is, not just where their character is, but where they'll, like Kurt would commonly say to me, hey, Mairzee, where's the audience right now? Where do you want the audience? And it would adjust how he's, maybe if we're misdirecting somebody or if we're drawing them in or something, he would actually ask those questions. And I don't know that there's only a handful of actors I've worked with that are sort of in that space. They understand their journey very, very thoroughly. And now they're really helping with me, the director, managing the audience's ride, which I think was, amazing. And that's, of course, he's a movie star. That's why.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Visual effects wise, was this the biggest project you've ever done?
No, I would say no.
Okay.
No,
So which
no.
one
It was
was
a
it?
big one, and it had some big elements for sure. And the VFX here, that one of the things that was so spectacular is that there's this amazing VFX, assets that they have that were spectacular. So those were very, very, very big. And I think that those assets, as they were awe-inspiring. But it's not a show that every shot is a VFX, and not every shot is, difficult,
Right.
because the actors are in a green environment and have no concept of where they actually are. So we did a lot to make sure we were trying to ground the space so that the actors were in the proper situations, so as much as possible could be real for their performances.
That's awesome. That's great. But what was the biggest one that you worked on with visual effects? Now that you said it, this one isn't. Just curious.
I guess I'm gonna say Shadow and Bone,
Okay.
where we had I in the season finale of season 2, there was just almost every shot had elements to it that had to be managed and worked on. So it was great. It was super, super fun. But relentlessly, everything was VFX. And just to be very mindful, because once you're into the VFX, it's like money, 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 which is great. And but it needs to be spent wisely, so you don't just kind of let it filter away. I would say about Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, is that it is a very high quality, high budget show that is amazing to watch, and the VFX are spectacular. They were super smart. We didn't use every little tiny thing that had to have VFX elements, but we had a lot of them, but they're all very, very well executed, I would
Yeah,
say.
and I thought, I agree with you 100% because it's less is more, quality versus
Yeah.
quantity. But I think for me, the biggest thing was I really loved, and this is where the curiosity kicks in, right? And that's do you have extra 5 minutes, or you have to leave at 1 o'clock?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay. One of the things about curiosity is like, when you're not shown that much, it kind of builds your anticipation. So that scene in episode one, I think, where it was like flashbacks initially, I think in
Yeah.
episode one, where
Mm-hmm.
Godzilla at the Golden Gate Bridge, I just thought I wanted to see more, but I'm glad I didn't see more. I mean, that
Yeah.
to me was really, it stood out. And obviously it's kind of like throughout the series, you'll see, an episode, some monster here and there, and it's not overly shown. Like, for example, now I don't know which episode this is. Now, if I say this, I'll have to wait until that episode airs, where they go inside the ship. Was that
Mm-hmm.
your episode? Was that your episode? Or is it
No,
before that?
that's one that's already aired.
Okay, good. And then
I think
that
that's
the
3 or 4. It's Julian Holmes's episodes. He was
okay,
the director on those. He was terrific. Yeah.
where that monster comes out, I thought, okay, now there's going to be this whole chase sequence, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
part of me, slightly a small part of me wanted, but I'm glad it didn't happen. It just ended right there, which was really cool. So it was, that's one of the things, again, I said earlier, the grounding part of the series, and you said too, is so pivotal and so important. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does it teases the audience a little bit, but it really does pay out too. It doesn't cheat the audience in those
yeah,
Titan moments at all. Those are, well earned, but they're not just throwing them around willy-nilly either.
yeah,
They're really well earned, they're well constructed, the assets are amazing to use, the Titan assets. And I think that it keeps bringing us back to the real story, which is about family, and it's about what lengths people will go to for their loved ones, and extraordinary lengths, and lengths you don't even realize that you would do. And it really keeps always coming back to family, and the cost and sacrifices that we're willing to go into for the people we love.
yeah,
And I think that is
yeah,
so relatable. Every single person on this planet understands what it means to have a connection with people, and what we do to keep them safe, especially in this fantasy world where the terrors are real. You know,
yeah,
so it's I think it's just a really interesting, such an appealing take on this material. I mean, I remember watching the original Toho ones, way back, and liking it because it's, oh my god, it's Godzilla, and the people, and the hilarious filmmaking of the day, just hilarious, and the dreadful subtitles, or not subtitle, the dubbing over the
oh
Japanese
God,
people.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Just fabulous, so funny, right? So entertaining. But it was not about any actual human connections. It was just monster stepping on things, and power lines falling over, and flames, and just so fun in that ridiculousness of it. this is such a different take on it. And it
Yeah.
just keeps drawing everything back to these people and the families and their own personal responsibilities to each other and to the world and to the greater good. And it really knocks on those themes that we relate to. I know that, for example, my sister was never a monster person. She didn't like any of those things, but she loves the series. She absolutely loves the
Mm,
show, and she just so connected with Kate, the Anna's character, Kate, especially. She's really, really connected with her, and how she's trying to process through her traumas, and how she's still trying to push through it and keeps getting, hit by obstacles, but is moving her way through it and finding a way to break open her heart uh, again and a little bit more in the face of what everything she knew to be true has sort of been thrown out the window, and her whole world has changed. And what does that mean? I think it's done a terrific job of that.
yeah. Yeah. No, so true. Just a few closing questions, and just in general, w what's the greatest fear that you have on the set or in post-production or in pre-production?
Greatest fear, I can't say that I have any. I mean, in
When
prep,
when when I say
I
fear, I
might
don't
have,
mean like being petrified. I just mean like that
yeah.
nervousness, right?
Well, in prep, early in prep, I will certainly look through any physical stuff, that stunt things that look like they could go sideways. And, we never, ever, ever want to put anybody in physical danger. The requirements of stunts, though, will require a stunt person. Generally, that means because that person is skilled in a certain area that the actor is not. And that we can be working with an actor, and the stunt person can be off rehearsing, and they have a certain skill set that will make them successful for that stunt. And we will do everything in our power to make sure that that stunt person is also not in any real danger that is beyond what we are setting up for, whether it's a high fall or a fight sequence or whatever. But so in prep, I would say that things that could possibly cause injury on set, those are the biggest things that we pay attention to in prep right off the top. We're going through those, we're looking at them, and we're saying, how do we do this in a way that will not harm anyone, and won't put stunt people in harm's way either, for that matter, and certainly no actors in harm's way. So those are the biggest things. If I look at a script and I see that it the journey, there has to be an engaging journey for the audience. That's the other part, is that you got to make sure that there is a change for your characters are changing somehow. And sometimes that's not really apparent in the script. In some scripts, not these scripts. These scripts are great. They all had great journeys, but sometimes they're not all that fleshed out. And so that's kind of a bridge out ahead warning. You got to go in there and say, okay, what's the intention? How do we help this person to have some sort of journey? Because you, as an audience, you want to watch somebody go through something and come out the other side different than they were. So what is that? So that's like at a script level, that's something that has to have a lot of attention paid to it. In post-production, what's fun is, and one of the things you have to do as a filmmaker, is release the expectations of what you had. Because they say, you've got one movie in prep, you've got another movie that you're shooting, and you've got another movie in post-production.
Mm,
And so, we obviously, there's a very measured approach to how we shoot something. Like, if there's a cutting pattern in place, there's a lot of preparation, and I know exactly what I'm going to shoot. But then when you sit in post, you really, as a director, have to put away what you were, what happened to you on set and what you imagined you saw on set and all of that emotional stuff, put it away and now come at the material cleanly again
Mm.
and look at what you actually have, and then be flexible to allow that to maybe these small adjustments that you, maybe there's something you didn't see, there's this little spark of something, a connection of something that you're like, oh my God, I didn't see that on the performance on that day. So that's the post-production thing, to kind of breathe, say, poof, I know what I got, put that over here, and let's look at what we have.
Yeah. One thing that we are all attracted to stories that somehow resonates with us at a deeper level. Sometimes we don't even realize it until maybe in production or post production or even after the film comes out. Um,
Yeah.
like for example, it changes every different phase of your life depending on wherever you are in life in terms of your
Mm.
maturity. Or what would that be in your case, whether it's this series or any series, that moment where it sort of dawned upon you that this is me, or this is something I can connect with, like a small element in the script, or when
Mm-hmm.
somebody's pitching you.
I think uh, what I would connect with is the potential for honesty. And I know this sounds so flaky, but it's really very, very true, is that when a situation or a performance is really, really honest,
Mm.
it connects with people regardless of gender or age or culture or where they are in the world, or we all recognize humanity's an honest human moments.
Yep.
And it doesn't, they are those transcendent moments in all art, and I think what I will feel is a potential when I read a piece. I'll feel a potential for a real humanity, even if it's very dysfunctional, even if it's very broken. It's like seeing in the villain the injured child. And
Mm.
if that villain can play a deep need, it is far more uh, connecting to us. Like on Shadow and Bone, I had this the big bad guy, but his heart was so, he was in such need to find a partner, as someone to, he was so lonely over centuries, he really needed that. In Smallville with Lex Luthor, again, really both of those actors did great jobs in those roles because they didn't play into any stereotype. They didn't play into, I'm just a bad guy because I'm a bad guy. They
Yeah.
they played into this idea that I know what is best for everyone. I know what's the best course of action. And these are really difficult choices to have to make. But I'm strong enough to make this choice. I've got broad enough shoulders to wear the cost of this, where a lesser person would not be able to shoulder the weight. I'm willing to do it because my heart is big enough. And when when I find a script or a piece that allows for people to be really real, and that's what our search will be for the whole piece, is to get as honest and real performances as possible. And that doesn't mean melodrama. It can be hidden behind a mask. And then I will hopefully find moments where that mask drops a little bit and we see the true fear, the true cost from the performer, the character. You see the cost for a moment. And that's where we suddenly connect with our humanity and we care about this person. We have a lot of senses that give us information, And we know it's a play, we know it's false, we know it's television, yet we recognize through that
Yeah.
when the actor is connecting to something that is universal. And that's what the pursuit is. And that's, if I see that in the potential in the script, that I'm in.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because one of the, I mean, there's so many examples, but one of the examples that I thought of that there was that moment that happened in a film that I was working on. It was a feature documentary following a protagonist named Ahmed who left Afghanistan after he came on the list of Taliban on a hit list. And he left his pregnant wife and his kids to save his life, and he ended up in Europe's worst refugee camp. So that was a story that was sort of got me in, to a certain level. But there was a moment, and this was completely not planned. We, it was randomly one morning. I filmed with him secretly inside a camp and everything. And randomly one morning, I said, "Let's go to the beach." This was in Greece. It was a small island called Mytilene, part of Lesbos Island. Let's go to the beach, and there's water, and that's how you kind of came here. And I just want to get that as a backdrop, and I'll just interview you for like 10 minutes. And he started talking, and at that point, somehow he deviated into something really, really deep, and he like how he left them, and it was the first time he spoke to someone, I think, that he felt guilty, and he lost it on camera, and that's when I was like, "Holy crap, what just happened?" And that feeling, knowing that moment was this is that story, that feeling that I was asking you about, like that feeling became huge and enormous where somebody's made a big decision and now they regret it. And I mean, how many people's lives are not like that, right?
But you recognize the humanity in that. Like, I bet at that moment, it's not just witnessing someone else's. What happens when it's really honest is you no longer are a witness. You are now sharing in the empathetic. You feel the same emotion. You feel the depth of that. And
Yeah.
as humans, when we watch TV or movies or read books or whatever, we have so many lives that we get to live, and
Yes.
we get to share in these experiences. And so when a actor is very, very good and they are unafraid in their roles to be what they really are, not this stereotype, it allows us to step inside that character
So
and
true.
feel as deep as it is. It's like in, Sophie's Choice, if you remember that film, that
Yeah,
great
yeah, yeah.
film. If they told us at the beginning of the movie what her choice had been, we would not be able to watch the movie.
Yeah.
So great would be the pain that most of us would be unable. Just turn it off. Turn it off. Can't. No, won't go. Can't be in there again, because it was so connective, that moment. And so when we get to know who she is, and we get to feel all the this fragility of her, and then realize why, it brings so much more weight to it. But again, it's because we could not have watched. No one would have watched it after that first moment if they told us that at the beginning. We just couldn't. It's just
Yeah.
too connective, you know. And the same
So
thing
true.
with how when we watch things, if it's a big bad emotion, you have to be mindful of that, because the audience will turn it off if they've connected so perfectly. They don't want to be there for very long, and if it looks like they got to stay there, they're not going to do it. Just
Yeah.
moments.
Yeah. 100%. Um, Lastly, what's next for you that you're able to talk about?
I'm not really able to talk about much, I'm afraid. I do have something coming in the Witcher universe that will be coming up, I guess, in about a year, but it's lots of visual effects as well. So it takes a while for VFX.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I'm not, I'm sort of I got several
Fine.
things, but I'm not to talk about any of them, I'm afraid.
No, that's fine. You're busy. That's all that matters.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
good.
very busy. Yeah.
It's been great talking to you, Mairzee. I've never seen Smallville. I know my brother and sister used to love it.
Yeah,
If you can tell me which episode it is, I would love to see that episode and would love to chat with you again if you have time in the future.
sure. Which one? The first one? The very, very first one?
The very first one that you directed, the one that you were telling me about
You
earlier.
bet. You bet. Oh God, what was it called? Started with an I. Um,
It's probably an IMDb.
so
I can always look it up.
it totally is. It was so much fun. It was such a awesome episode. It was so beautifully written. And it was written by, as I said, Caroline Drace. Oh God, now I can't remember episodes. It was season 4, maybe. I don't even
Okay.
remember. Season
I'll
5.
figure it out. I'll
Yeah,
figure it out.
starts
Yeah,
with
no,
an
that
I.
would be.
I-N. Yeah.
Yeah, she wrote 19. Oh, she was executive story editor for 22 episodes, and she was story editor for 19 episodes. Interesting. Okay, no, I will do that. Maybe, the next coming months we can chat
Yeah, it was
again.
so much fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I'd love to. Love to. This has been super fun. And hopefully I didn't give away too much. I have to be careful. And now we talked a little bit about episode 6. So you can't play it next week. It has to be
Yeah.
after whenever that is, the 15th, I think.
Whenever that it's airing, that the day it airs, that's when it goes up. So nothing to
Okay.
worry about.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
No, no,
Yeah, that
no,
was
no
super
problem.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
likewise. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment. And do come back for another episode. Until then, have a great day.